Thank you very much. We gather here today as members of a historic alliance, an alliance that saved and changed the world. You know, when this conference began in 1963, it was in a nation, actually it was on a continent, that was divided against itself. The line between communism and freedom ran through the heart of Germany.
Boo.
The first barbed fences of the Berlin Wall had gone up just 2 years prior. And just months before that first conference, before our predecessors first met here in Munich, the Cuban Missile Crisis had brought the world to the brink of nuclear destruction.
Yeah, why'd that happen? Why'd that fucking happen? That was our doing. And by our, I mean America and Turkey, ironically enough, even though Turkey is more of a junior partner here. We put missile bases directly in the ass cheeks of the borders of the USSR. Okay? So, of course, in retaliation to that, the USSR did the same with Cuba. Again, a lot of the reasons as to why Americans are just kept in the dark about our own history. Okay? America is kept in the dark about our own history, and that is by design, and that is precisely the reason why we think, oh, it's so crazy, it's so scary that they just like built missile bases in Cuba, which, by the way, objectively was a good thing for Cuba. Turkish people did not know anything about it. Of course, Turkish people had no hand in this. The Turkish government barely had a say in it. Let's be real. And yes, the USSR putting nukes in Cuba was a good thing. Okay, 100% was a good thing. It allowed Cuba to maintain a nuclear protection against the United States of America. 100%. Khrushchev was a lion with his machinations. Okay, straight up. Look at what we're doing to fucking Cuba right now. A nuclear Cuba would not have to deal with this shit that we're doing currently.
Even as World War II still burned fresh in the memory of Americans and Europeans alike, we found ourselves staring down the barrel of a new global catastrophe. One with the potential for a new kind of destruction, more apocalyptic and final than anything before in the history of mankind. The time of that first gathering, Soviet communism was on the march. Thousands of years of Western civilization hung in the balance. At that time, victory was far from certain. But we were driven by a common purpose. We were unified not just by what we were fighting against. We were unified by what we were fighting for. And together, Europe and America prevailed. And a continent was rebuilt. Our people prospered. In time, the East and West blocks were reunited. A civilization was once again made whole. That infamous wall that had cleaved this nation into two came down, and with it an evil empire. And the East and West became one again. But the euphoria of this triumph led us to a dangerous delusion that we had entered, quote, the end of history, that every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. And it has cost us dearly. In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized.
For the record, this was well received. I need you to understand, this was well received by that room. They saw this as I guess because in comparison to last year's speech by J.D. Vance, which just got up on that stage and was like, you guys are doing too much woke stuff and we're going to punish you for it. Because if you recall, J.D. Vance's speech was almost entirely about censorship and not even about Israel, mind you. It was entirely about censorship around like, you know, trans stuff or anti-immigrant sentiment being suppressed. And the fucking Munich Security Conference ate this speech up. They were like, oh, thank God, Marco Rubio, the fucking war hawk that is currently posturing against death and destruction globally, against all of our enemies, is back to business as usual politics. Because you have to remember, like, a lot of those people in that room, they don't mind if you are doing endless militarism overseas, endlessly punishing the global south. They love that. They want that. Okay, they can make money doing that. What they were frustrated by was America's interference in their sovereignty, in their domestic affairs, not allowing them to, have any sort of say in their own design, in their own countries, Europe, right? So when Marco Rubio goes back to the old neocon methods and it talks about how, like, we're bringing about prosperity and freedom through free markets, the freer the markets, the freer the people, and like our enemies don't have that same interest. Europe abso-fucking-lutely, European leaders abso-fucking-lutely love this shit. Do the European audiences respond positively to this? I don't think so. Like, all of our comrades overseas living in Europe that have been fighting endlessly to let their voices be heard about Europe's militarization, about austerity that's coming as a consequence of funds being reallocated to, again, building up a robust military industrial complex in Europe as well. That kind of stuff is very frustrating for a lot of people. But European leadership looks forward to statements like this. Make no mistake.
Their companies to systematically undercut ours, shuttering our plants, resulting in large parts of our societies being deindustrialized.
They were saying that the crowd basically had a collective sigh of relief in the aftermath of the speech.
Shipping millions of working and middle class jobs overseas and handing control of our critical supply chains to both adversaries and rivals. We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests. To appease a climate...
Why would anybody believe him? What do you mean? Yeah, Europe leaders greet Rubio's transatlantic message with relief. What are you talking about? This is what they look forward to. Europe was never mad at Donald Trump for its instability in the global south. Europe was mad at Donald Trump for potentially going back on punishing Russia. Europe was mad at Donald Trump for not being as aggressive in most instances, or rather being aggressive towards them. I thought I was able to explain this thoroughly during the Mark Carney speech, because these two things happen so close to one another. America going in and kidnapping the leader of a sovereign nation and his wife, and then America turning around and saying, we're going to take Greenland. We're going to annex Greenland. The reason why the European allies and Canada loved what America did with Venezuela, but hated what America was doing with Greenland, is because they don't give a fuck about Venezuela. They don't care. They understand that the rule-based international order is designed to punish nations in the periphery, but you're not supposed to touch those in the core. You're not supposed to actually offend the sensibilities of those in the core. And as long as you don't outwardly posture against them, as long as you don't outwardly posture against European allies, and you keep playing ball, I guess, they will be happy, loyal serfs. They are fine being vassalized. They are fine as vassal states. They were offended that Donald Trump said the quiet part out loud. They don't even mind if Donald Trump says the quiet part out loud when it comes to nations in the periphery. You say, I'm going to Venezuela for the oil, and these guys will, they'll go, I don't know about all this. I don't feel too great, but ultimately it's for the greater good. But yeah, as long as he maintains civility and a diplomatic tone, you have to understand many of the European leadership are liberals in the same vein as the Democratic Party. Okay? You can see them, to Americanize this conversation, European leadership in many respects is not dissimilar to the Never Trump Republicans and the liberals that say we want a strong Republican Party. It's just the aesthetics that they don't like. And also, Trump's indecent ways where he will every now and then say, know your fucking place, European leaders. Okay. Here's Edward Wong, diplomatic correspondent of the New York Times, saying Rubio's speech in Munich warned of the civilizational erasure of Europe and the ills of mass migration. He said the U.S. aims to save European culture, and he pushed for more defense spending. These were the same themes Vance struck last year, but Rubio had a friendlier tone. And it wasn't just that, though. It was also the fact that he packaged that up with fighting against Europe's adversaries and America's adversaries rather than fighting against Europe entirely. Because J.D. Vance and Donald Trump both took a different tone where they were antagonistic to Europe. Marco Rubio approached it like an old school neocon and approached the subject matter as a defense of Europe. And of course, these guys much prefer the defense of Europe sentiment rather than attacking Europe. Of course, the very same lack of internal pressure from labor unions and things like that very much exists in the United States of America. The same hollowed out organizational structure. Even in Europe, there is obviously more labor militancy, of course. There's general strikes. There's no shortage of revolutionary sentiment in Europe. But even then, it kind of feels like European leadership doesn't respond to that either. And Israel was a perfect example of this. People are burning cars, turning them upside down on the streets. They're doing mass strikes, general strikes, things of that nature. And yet, European leadership does not budge in their individual nations in the way that they calculate their relationship with America and Israel. But let's continue.
Cult. We have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people, even as our competitors.
Unpopular opinion? I wish we still had the Soviet Union. What do you mean unpopular opinion? That's the popular opinion in this community. It's an unpopular opinion. It's not even it's an unheard of opinion in the United States of America, but this is the one community where that is the most popular opinion.
Exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people. We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts and to move forward, to rebuild. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference, and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. For the United States and Europe, we belong together. America was founded 250 years ago, but the roots began here on this continent long before. The men who settled and built the nation of my birth arrived on our shores carrying the memories and the traditions and the Christian faith of their ancestors.
Yeah, they're basically he also creates this like grand vision where like where Europe's little brother, like our nation is comprised of like European migration. It's all European migrants that made it's like trying to tie it all together with like a white nationalist narrative as well, which is ironic because he's fucking Cuban. Okay, like this is yet another like silly aspect of American fascism, where he's adding on this white nationalist sentiment into what is pretty mainline neocon propaganda, right? Why aren't you extensively covering the 250,000 people in Iran protests in Munich? Because I think this is more relevant, especially considering that all of the, first of all, 250,000, I didn't know that there was that many people. That's an insane number. I feel like you're just, you might be exaggerating a little bit. 250,000. And not only that, but also those protests are utterly irrelevant. Like, it doesn't matter. America is going to do what Israel wants America to do in Iran. If there were 250,000 people saying, like, hands off Iran, for example, you think America would give a shit? Fuck no. Sure, 250,000 people that are begging America to blow up Iran. America's going to blow up Iran if it feels the need to do so, if Israel wants to push for it hard enough. It's that simple.
As a sacred inheritance, an unbreakable link between the old world and the new. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent.
That's a number that was given by Munich police, a profoundly exaggerated number when looking at the pictures. I mean, sure, it doesn't matter, though. Let's say 1 million people took the streets of Munich to demand what? To bomb Iran? Okay, America's going to do it anyway. You think they give a shit about German pro-Iran militarism protests? Millions of people took to the streets in America in the No Kings protests. We didn't even listen to the American citizens. You think America gives a fuck about Germans protesting? Are you stupid? At most, they'll say, look at how much support we have. We were going to do this thing we were going to do regardless. Thank you for the support.
In our council. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive. Because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours. Because we know that the fate of Europe will never be irrelevant to our own. National security, which this conference is largely about, is not merely a series of technical questions. How much we spend on defense or where, how we deploy it, these are important questions. They are. But they are not the fundamental one. The fundamental question we must answer at the outset is, what exactly are we defending? Because armies do not fight for abstractions. Armies fight for a people. Armies fight for a nation. Armies fight for a way of life. And that is what we are defending. A great civilization that has every reason to be proud of its history, confident of its future, and aims to always be the master of its own economic and political destiny. It was here, in Europe, where the ideas that planted the seeds of liberty that changed the world were born. It was here, in Europe, which gave the world the rule of law, the universities, and the scientific revolution. It was this continent that produced the genius of Mozart and Beethoven, of Dante and Shakespeare, of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And this is the place where the vaulted ceilings of the Sistine Chapel and the towering spires of the great cathedral in Cologne, they testify not just to the greatness of our past or to a faith in God that inspired these marvels. They foreshadow the wonders that await us in our future. But only if we are unapologetic in our heritage and proud of this common inheritance can we together begin the work of envisioning and shaping our economic and our political future.
Oh, God. Unapologetic in our heritage.
Was not inevitable. It was a conscious policy choice.
We must fight for our mutual shared Western civilization defense brigades. It's just it's so lame. It's so shitty. It's also Hitlerian, but I guess more civil. But that's enough for these fucking Eurocucks to go, no, I like it. It's good for me.
Economic undertaking that stripped our nations of their wealth, of their productive capacity, and of their independence.
Climate cult. Also, you have to understand, like, climate change is real, right? Anthropogenic climate change is real. It's been a thing that scientists have been warning about. Global warming, climate catastrophe is a thing that is unavoidable, undeniable. We're seeing the impact all the time. And yet, because China are the superpower that has positioned itself the best against combating climate change, is seen as the major threat here. America is also actively not only pushing militarism, but also actively saying climate change is fake. It's bullshit. You have to stop. You have to stop trying to move in the direction of renewables. This is another major aspect of American engineering. They are actively trying to get Europe back on oil and natural gas. They are trying to move Europe and anyone else away from renewable energies and investing into renewable energies. It is a total psychopathic death cult. Okay? Yes, China is at Munich as well, of course, at the Munich Security Conference. But understand that, like, every conversation that's being had about renewable energy right now is being had specifically because China has the monopoly control over the energy grids and the procurement, extraction, and refinement process of the raw, as what Donald Trump calls raw earth minerals, rare earth minerals that are necessary for production. Okay? And that is precisely the reason why they are trying to move away from that, or trying to urge the European Union to not revitalize its grid and move in the direction of renewable energy.
And the loss of our supply chain sovereignty was not a function of a prosperous and healthy system of global trade. It was foolish. It was a foolish but voluntary transformation of our economy that left us dependent on others for our needs and dangerously vulnerable to crisis. Mass migration isn't some fringe concern of little consequence. It was and continues to be a crisis which is transforming and destabilizing societies all across the West. Together, we can reindustrialize our economies and rebuild our capacity to defend our people. But the work of this new alliance should not be focused just on military cooperation and reclaiming the industries of the past. It should also be focused on together advancing our mutual interests in new frontiers, unshackling our ingenuity, our creativity, and the dynamic spirit to build a new Western century. Commercial space travel and cutting-edge artificial intelligence, industrial automation and flex manufacturing, creating a Western supply chain for critical minerals not vulnerable to extortion from other powers, and a unified effort to compete for market share in the economies of the global South. Together, we can not only take back control of our own industries and supply chains, we can prosper in the areas that will define the 21st century. But we must also gain control of our national borders. Controlling who and how many people enter our countries, this is not an expression of xenophobia, it is not hate. It is a fundamental act of national sovereignty. And the failure to do so is not just an abdication of one of our most basic duties owed to our people. It is an urgent threat to the fabric of our societies and the survival of our civilization itself. And finally, we can no longer place the so-called global order above the vital interests of our people and our nations. We do not need to abandon the system of international cooperation we authored. And we don't need to dismantle the global institutions of the old order that together we built. But these must be reformed. These must be rebuilt. For example, the United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world. But we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers and has played virtually no role. It could not solve the war in Gaza. Instead, it was American leadership that freed captives from barbarians and brought about a fragile truce. It has not solved the war in Ukraine. It took American leadership in partnership with many of the countries here today just to bring the two sides to the table in search of a still elusive peace. It was powerless to constrain.
I'm sorry. I think whoever is the leader of the opposition force against this has to use clearer terminology when addressing this stuff and cannot shy away from openly saying that this is a continuation of the liberal international order and that this system has been proven to be an abject failure. No more like going back to business as usual. You can't do that. You cannot do that. You have to be very clear in your terms to say what Marco Rubio is trying to offer is a soft landing back to business as usual militarism. And that is something that we cannot get back to, because what that looks like is no different than vulgar Brandonism, which yielded endless genocide of the Palestinians and created so much chaos and showed the world that this system is broken fundamentally. Okay? That's it. I cannot believe that he's going with this. Like, the best alternative here is to have Marco Rubio put lipstick back on the fucking pig only a month after Donald Trump said, nah, this is broken. We're going to keep dominating you.
The nuclear program of radical Shia clerics in Tehran, that required 14 bombs dropped with precision from American B-2 bombers. And it was unable to address the threat to our security from a narco-terrorist dictator in Venezuela. Instead, it took American special forces to bring this fugitive to justice. In a perfect world, all of these problems and more would be solved by diplomats and strongly worded resolutions. But we do not live in a perfect world. And we cannot continue to allow those who blatantly and openly threaten our citizens and endanger our global stability to shield themselves behind abstractions of international law.
It's so funny because the guy who was doing that for Europe wasn't even Russia, at least last month. It was Donald Trump, right? The reason why Europe is terrified of Vladimir Putin is because there's the fears, there's the Red Scare fears of the USSR incursion, like the historical significance of like Russia moving in that direction. But it was Trump. It was Trump that was doing this. Trump was actually presenting a real grave threat to the European vassals. More so than even Vladimir Putin for a brief moment, right? Like where the world said that they were more afraid. In the Munich Security Conference, they asked people in the beginning of the conference, like, who are you more threatened by? They universally said America. They said they were more threatened by America than China for the first time ever. Now, post Marco Rubio speech, at the Munich one too. They said it at Davos and they said it at Munich in the beginning too. No, they said it in the beginning of the Munich Security Conference as well. They said that they were more afraid of Donald Trump than Xi Jinping when polled.
Which they themselves routinely violate. This is the path that President Trump and the United States has embarked upon. It is the path we ask you here in Europe.
Why is your viewer count so low? It's Saturday. Also so low. There's almost 30,000 people watching. I'd say it's pretty good.
To join us on. It is a path we have walked together before and hope to walk together again. For 5 centuries, before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires.
I think you're misunderstanding. Rubio explicitly said rule-based international order is bad and constrains the United States while being ineffective, even though the way it was designed heavily favored the U.S. This neo-realist foreign policy on the right is explicit about multilateralism being useless. Yeah, but it's just a way to say the quiet part out loud for them. That's all this is. So as long as he maintains like European defense at the forefront of his conversation, even if he's using like, you know, he's peppering in white nationalism with like neocon sentiment, that's fine for the Europeans. As long as he doesn't put the Europeans in the crosshairs and says, we have a shared understanding of defending Western civilization, Western culture. We're going to fucking fight for you, not fight against you. Trump says we're going to fight against you. Marco Rubio comes out and says we're going to fight for you, but we're going to do it in a way where sometimes it might seem like we're dominating you, but it's fine. Then a lot of the European leadership will say, yeah, that's fine by me. That's the reason why they liked this speech.
Extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions, by anti-colonial uprisings that would transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Against that backdrop, then as now, many came to believe that the West's age of dominance had come to an end, and that our future was destined to be a faint and feeble echo of our past. But together, our predecessors recognized that decline was a choice, and it was a choice they refused to make. This is what we did together once before, and this is what President Trump and the United States want to do again now, together with you. And this is why we do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. The alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the...
He's saying, like, you got to be bold. You got to be brave. We're going to do some fuck shit. And you got to come along with us. That's crazy. I mean, this is some straight up Nazi garbanzo for the record. Okay. And as long as the European nation states are controlled by people who are happy with the current business as usual, as long as they can put the pressure on the naysayers, because that's the big problem in Europe, right? That was a big problem with Israel as well. Like the endless amounts of protests and the broad recognition that the democratic process wasn't actually really happening. It wasn't a real democracy at all. Was making it much harder for the liberals in Europe to maintain their grip on power. And that's, that's the real concern here. Marco Rubio, in some ways, is not different than the J.D. Vance speech, where he's basically saying, you have to come along for the ride, whether you think you like it or not.
The future. And the only
you
fear
guys
we
love
have
using that word,
is the fear
Nazi,
of the shame.
Nazi. I mean, yeah. What do you say to someone who wants to, if he was delivering the speech in German, maybe you could understand it? Is that what it is? Is it because he's saying it in English that is hard to comprehend? Because there's not a lot of differences between what he's saying here as far as the superiority of Western civilization and what Adolf Hitler's plea was to Europe initially before World War II. It's identical, as a matter of fact. It is identical. Adolf Hitler made plenty of pleas to England. I mean, he was an Anglophile.
Of not leaving our nations prouder, stronger, and wealthier for our children. an alliance ready to defend our people, to safeguard our interests, and to preserve the freedom of action that allows us to shape our own destiny. Not one that exists to operate a global welfare state and atone for the purported sins of past generations. An alliance that does not allow its power to be outsourced, constrained, or subordinated to systems beyond its control. One that does not depend on others for the critical necessities of its national life. And one that does not maintain the polite pretense that our way of life.
Like, this is not dishonesty, by the way. It requires an impressive amount of dishonesty for the U.S. to veto multiple UN efforts to end the war in Gaza and then come out and bash the UN for playing no role in ending the Gaza war. Here's the problem. I think Matt Duss's perspective here is unrealistic. Okay? Because the UN design in the liberal international order was so that they played along with whatever the fuck America wanted. And that's precise. That's reflected in like our Cuba policy. That's reflected in our Israel policy. For years and years, the United Nations has made a big fuss about Israel being an apartheid state. And nothing has come about, right? The reality of the matter is Marco Rubio is basically saying, like, the UN is a hurdle. That's the reason why the UN is becoming too much of a hurdle in our vision, in the way that we want to move around the world. It's not compliant enough, even aesthetically. And because America's global power is being tested for the first time ever, militarily with Russia in Ukraine, and economically with China being the manufacturing hub of the planet now, that's the reason why they're sweating the small stuff in ways that they never did. Because the United Nations has always stood in opposition to the United States of America, even though overall it's packaged in a way where like the ICC, ICJ, like they just go after America's enemies and never against America, you know? So the reality is Marco Rubio is basically saying that this system doesn't work for us anymore. And that's, in my opinion, and I don't think this is too hopeful of a perspective. I don't think I'm being too optimistic when I say this. Like, I think America is sweating this hurdle right now than ever before because it doesn't have the same motion it did. It doesn't command the seas in the same way that it once did.
It's just one among many, and that asks for permission before it acts. And above all, an alliance based on the recognition that we, the West, have inherited together. What we have inherited together is something that is unique and distinctive and irreplaceable. Because this, after all, is the very foundation of the transatlantic bond. Acting together in this way, we will not just help recover a sane foreign policy. It will restore to us a clear sense of ourselves. It will restore a place in the world.
By the way, Chicago mayor is about to be in the building, and I'm going to welcome him in a second, and then we're going to move on. We're going to talk about like what progressive mayors can do, what he has done, all this stuff. And Lori Lightfoot. Yeah, we're going to talk. Yeah, Lori Lightfoot's in the building. Rahm Emanuel's in the building. Yeah, the real Brandon is in the building. Let's go, Brandon. And you know, we'll have a conversation, and then we'll get back to the Munich Security Conference stuff after he's left the building.
And in so doing, it will rebuke and deter the forces of civilizational erasure that today menace both America and Europe alike. So in a time of headlines heralding the end of the transatlantic era, let it be known and clear to all that this is neither our goal nor our wish. Because for us Americans, our home may be in the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe. Our story began with an Italian explorer whose adventure into the great unknown to discover a new world brought Christianity to the Americas and became the legend that defined the imagination of our pioneer nation. Our first colonies were built by English settlers, to whom we owe not just the language we speak, but the whole of our political and legal system. Our frontiers were shaped by Scots-Irish, that proud, hardy clan from the hills of Ulster. They gave us Davy Crockett and Mark Twain and Teddy Roosevelt and Neil Armstrong. Our great Midwestern heartland was built by German farmers and craftsmen who transformed empty plains into a global agricultural powerhouse. And by the way, dramatically upgraded the quality of American beer. Our expansion into the interior followed the footsteps of French fur traders and explorers whose names, by the way, still adorn the street signs and town names all across the Mississippi Valley. Our horses, our ranches, our rodeos, the entire romance of the cowboy archetype that became synonymous with the American West. These were born in Spain.
He said archetype.
And our largest and most iconic city was named New Amsterdam before it
archetype, bro.
was named New York. And you know that in the year that my country was founded, Lorenzo and Catalina Giraldi...
We are so cooked. This speech is too far if we're looking at it from a EU neolib perspective. Yeah. If you're like, I mean, look. There is not to get all third world up in this bitch, but like, this is something that I talked about quite a bit during the genocide in Gaza, where like Europeans have this nascent, unrecognized level of like Euro racism, like European leadership specifically. And this tugs on that a little bit. It's maybe a little too American and a little too white nationalist in general. But he's hitting. What is this? Is why I despise libs. Hasan says Tyler is polite. Meanwhile, he weasels. Meanwhile, this weasel has on the left's biggest op. I mean, he's the fucking former president. Calm down. Pointing out that as if York isn't a European city too, Lamau, he's an idiot.
Lived in Casal Monferrato in the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. And Jose and Manuel Arena lived in Sevilla, Spain. I don't know what, if anything, they knew about the 13 colonies which had gained their independence from the British Empire. But here's what I'm certain of. They could have never imagined that 250 years later, one of their direct descendants would be back here today on this continent as the chief diplomat of that infant nation.
Like, this one probably bangs so hard for Asmongold's audience. Like, this speech is almost designed perfectly for Asmongold's audience of like the Euro racist trash that fancy themselves to be like American MAGA. Because this is a perfect melting pot of the new version of Eurofascism. Eurofascism now in the modern age is very MAGA coded, and this also perfectly ties that together. And the Euro, but it's also civil enough for the Euro liberals to also engage with this in a positive way. Where it's like we're all this like beautiful Western civilization. We all have the same interests here, which is unlimited death and destruction for all in the periphery, and a share of profits, a profit distribution that like you will benefit from as well. All this stuff.
And yet here I am.
I'll be back.
Reminded by my own story that both our histories and our fates will always be linked. Together we rebuilt the shattered continent in the wake of 2 devastating world wars. When we found ourselves divided once again by the Iron Curtain, the Free West linked arms with the courageous dissidents struggling against tyranny in the East to defeat Soviet communism. We have fought against each other, then reconciled, then
while I do that,
fought, then reconciled again, and we have bled and died side by side on battlefields from Pyongyang to Kandahar. And I'm here today to leave it clear that America is charting the path for a new century of prosperity, and that once again, we want to do it together with you, our cherished allies and our oldest friends.
turn this off. What do you mean? That's goat talk. Okay. All right, that was a fun little sidestep that we took. I hope that was informative for you guys. Okay, Hasan, I think you have DID too. I think you have 2 personalities, H and J. What does that even mean? Hopefully that was an informative interview for all of you guys as well. I do think that the mayor gets he has a tough job, and I do think that he gets a bad rap overall. I think his media focus needs a little bit more work. I was happy to wait. Hasan and Jester, those are my 2 personalities. Yeah. Also, thank Obama. Thank you, Obama. Who are you talking to? Oh, she's here. I didn't even realize yeah. I was like, what the hell is going on? That was great. I wish it was longer. Yeah. I wanted to ask him about Gavin Newsom, but we didn't have time. I wanted to hear him talk about how Gavin Newsom is our only shot at electoral success. But I think, judging by his attitude about corporate Democrats, you probably, you probably figured out where he's at, right? What about Rahm Emanuel? Oh, my goat. Love him. Can you get Pritzker on? I think so. I think I can get Pritzker on. That's not so far-fetched. All right, let's get back to the Munich Security Conference and talk about my favorite thing that I love talking about, which is American foreign policy and the death and disaster that it brings about around the globe. Dude, he was on the board of AIPAC. Are you sure? Yes, that's the reason why I want Rahm Emanuel. I think he'd be even better. You need a guy. Listen. Being on the board of AIPAC. Oh, you mean JB? Oh, I don't care. Yeah, I mean, I still want to talk to him. I love when chatters will be like, well, this guy has opinions that you might not agree with. It's like, yeah, no shit, dog. Hello? I'm a fucking anti-imperialist, socialist content creator and a person that engages in agitated propaganda. I would interview anyone. Like, I don't give a shit. Most politicians I don't fully agree with. And even ones that I thought I would fully agree with, sometimes I don't agree with the way that they're handling certain, in the way that they're dealing with certain issues, right? Not everyone's going to be Xi Jinping. I mean, I have areas of disagreement with Xi Jinping as well. Let's be real.
We want to do it together with you. With a Europe that is proud of its heritage and of its history. With a Europe that has the spirit of creation and liberty that sent ships out into uncharted seas and birthed our civilization. With a Europe that has the means to defend itself and the will to survive. We should be proud of what we achieved together in the last century. But now we must confront and embrace the opportunities of a new one. Because yesterday is over. The future is inevitable.
I like that everyone is saying that the international order is over. Like the old world order is dead. It's time for a new one. And for America, for Americans like Marco Rubio, what he means is like, we got to be more violent. We got to be more vile. We got to destabilize further. We are not doing enough. Sat right behind you when you were speaking at UBC. Just wanted to let you know you have a normal size head. Thank you. Your check will be delivered in the mail. Be on the lookout for that.
Destiny together awaits. Thank you.
Standing ovation, by the way. Got a standing O for this. That guy looks like the guy who drinks his own piss. You know what I'm talking about? The influencer who drinks his own pee. Sorry, I know it's not relevant to the conversation, but I just had to clock him real quick.
Mr. Secretary, I'm not sure you heard the sigh of relief through this hall when we were just listening to what I would interpret as a message of reassurance of partnership.
Told you. Told you. Let the dick sucking commence, boys. Let the bootlicking commence. Oh, we loves it. We loves it. We loves you, Marco. Please keep sticking it to the periphery, not us, you know. I hope you can get us out of the crosshairs of the Trump administration. We were very offended when you said, oh, we want the Greenland. We said, oh, Mr. President, we can give you the Greenland for free. Why do you want to disrupt the delicate allegiance that we have with the NATO?
You spoke of intertwined relations.
We are back to being the happy vassal, yeah. We like to be the happy vassal, the serfs.
Between the United States and Europe.
They're like goldfish, they have zero memory. No, dude, they're fucking cowards. And also, they are, and I stressed this before, they are beholden to the same corporate interests that the Democrats and the Republicans are both beholden to. That's the reason why they're happy, because now it's not like fucking up the bag so much. It's not fucking up the bag. It's not too disruptive. It's basically saying like, no, we're going to do the same thing. Don't worry. That's what it is.
Reminds me of statements made decades ago by your predecessors when the discussion was, is actually America a European power? Is America a power in Europe?
See? I told you they would fucking eat this speech up. I didn't even hear this. I didn't even hear them go, oh, yes, it reminds me of the one Adolf. Very nice. It reminds me of the Adolf Hitler, who was often misunderstood. Yeah, he just wanted to unite the international forces of Europe. Europe is very nice. We love it.
Thank you for offering.
Like, the reality of the matter is the previous iteration of the New World Order post, the global order post World War II was the anti-communist forces coming together. Okay. And any sort of like reassurance that we will continue with that grand design is enough for these fucking cowards. Okay.
Bring this message of reassurance about our partnership. This is actually not the first time that Marco Rubio is here at the Munich Security Conference. He's been here before, a couple of times, but it's the first time he has been, and he is the speaker as Secretary of State. So thank you again. We have only a couple of minutes now for just a few questions. And if I may, we collected questions from the audience. One of the sort of key issues here today is, of course, continues to...
Bro thanked him 3 times, yeah. Like, before he asked a question, he's like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We loves our position. We loves it, yeah. Yeah? Yeah, we loves it. Jawohl. Yeah. So good. Sehr good. We are the happy puppies, yeah. Danke, danke, danke schön.
Be the question of how to deal with the war in Ukraine. Many of us, in the discussions of the last 24 hours, have voiced their impression that the Russians, let me put it colloquially, the Russians are playing for time. They're not really interested in a meaningful settlement. There is no indication that they're willing to compromise on any of their maximalist objectives. Offer to us, if you could, your assessment of where we are and where you think we can go.
Well, I think where we are...
Yes, ich möchte schlupen das. Ich möchte schlupen das. Ich möchte Penis. Oui, oui, ja.
At this point is that the issues at play that have to be... Here's the good news. The good news is that the issues that need to be confronted to end this war have been narrowed. That's the good news. The bad news is they've been narrowed to the hardest questions to answer, and work remains to be done in that front. I hear your point about, well, the answer is we don't know. We don't know if the Russians are serious about ending the war. They say they are, and under what terms they were willing to do it, and whether we can find terms that are acceptable to Ukraine upon that Russia will always agree to. But we're going to continue to test it. In the meantime, everything else continues to happen. The United States has imposed additional sanctions on Russia's oil. In our conversations with India, we've gotten their commitment to stop buying additional Russian oil. Europe has taken its set of steps moving forward. The Pearl program continues.
He's like, what will America do to stop the Russian incursion into Ukraine? We're genuinely afraid. Marco Rubio's response is, buy less oil. It just completely collapse your economy, collapse it further. This is how you do it. You just buy American natural gas. You buy American oil, baby. You buy it from elsewhere. Okay. And I think genuinely, I mean, Europeans have deluded themselves into thinking that this is actually beneficial for them, where they like, I really, really believe that if you ask the average European politician, especially the average German politician, they're like, well, at least we have energy independence from Russia now. Like, straight up. I think they've said this so much, so frequently, that they ended up believing in it, where they're like, no, this is great. Like, we have an over-reliance on America now, and that's a good thing because it's a far better partner, far better ally than Russia, far more reliable. Even though America is looking at that situation and going, and yes, we are going to demand more from the vassals now. We are demanding more from the vassals now. It's never going to stop. And they're like, well, it's fine. As long as you don't tell us that you're, pissing on our faces, as long as you keep telling us while pissing on our faces that it's raining and not tell us that actually we're getting pissed on, we're happy. You know what I'm talking about? You're pissing on my face and you're telling me it's raining. Like, America's basically, Marco Rubio is pissing on their faces and telling them it's raining. Donald Trump was saying, we're pissing on your face. They would like to go back to someone telling them it's fucking raining. That's it. The piss is not going to stop.
In which American weaponry is being sold for the Ukrainian war effort. So all these things continue. Nothing has stopped in the interim. So there's no buying of time here in that regard. What we can't answer, but we're going to continue to test, is whether there is an outcome that Ukraine can live with and that Russia will accept. And I would say it's been elusive up to this point. We've made progress in the sense that for the first time, I think, in years, at least at the technical level, there were military officials from both sides that met together last week, and there'll be meetings again on Tuesday, although it may not be the same group of people. Look, we're going to continue to do everything we can to play this role of bringing this war to the end. I don't think anybody in this room would be against a negotiated settlement to this war so long as the conditions are just and sustainable. And that's what we aim to achieve, and we're going to continue to try to achieve it, even as all these other things continue to happen on the sanctions front and so forth.
Thank you very much. I'm sure if we had more time, there would be many questions on Ukraine. But let me conclude by asking a question about something entirely different. The next speaker here in just a couple of minutes will be the Foreign Minister of China. When you served in the Senate, sir, people considered you a kind of a China hawk.
So did they.
So did they.
Yeah.
We know that there will be, in about 2 months' time, a summit meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping. Give us your expectation. Are you optimistic? Can there be a quote-unquote deal with China? What do you expect?
Well, I would say this. The two largest economies in the world, two of the big powers on the planet, we have an obligation to communicate with them and talk, and so do many of you on a bilateral basis as well. I mean, it would be geopolitical malpractice to not be in conversations with China. I would say this, because we're two...
Oh my God. This is crazy. It's the same. It's literally civility. That's all that was missing for these guys. I truly thought there was at least like a moment of panic that Donald Trump saying the quiet part out loud would have caused them to really reconsider these partnerships. That's not the case at all. They just needed to hear someone speak with decorum, someone speak civilly. That's all this is. It's shocking, dude. They were desperate for simply just the facade. That's it. Wow. It's fucking nutty, dude. I don't know exactly how much pressure has boiled in the respective European nations, but if it resembles the anger and resentment of the American working class, Europe already has a better mechanism of pushback, a closer association with like rebellion and then, you know, lighting cities on fucking fire, shutting off industries. I don't think they can continue maintaining this business as usual politics. I feel like Europe is even in a worse position overall. The European political class is in a worse predicament overall if they think this is enough. This is going to help. Oh my God. It's crazy, dude. It's crazy. As long as they hear the empty words and the niceties, they're like, no, it's fine. We're happy. We're happy with this.
Large countries with huge global interests, our national interests will often not align. Their national interest and ours will not align, and we owe it to the world to try to manage those as best we can, obviously avoiding conflict, both economic and worse. And that's so it's important for us to have communications with them in that regard. On areas in which our interests are aligned, I think we can work together to make positive impact on the world, and we seek opportunities to do that with them. So, but we have to have a relationship with China, and many of the countries represented here today are going to have a relationship with China, always understanding that nothing that we agree to could come at the expense of our national interest. And frankly, we expect China to act in their national interest, as we expect every nation state to act in their national interest. And the goal of diplomacy is to try to navigate those times in which our national interests come into conflict with one another, always hoping to do it peacefully. I think we also have a special obligation because whatever happens between the U.S. and China on trade has a global implication. So there are long-term challenges that we face that we're going to have to confront that are going to be irritants in our relationship with China. That's not just true for the United States, that's true for the broader West. But I do think we need to try to manage those the best we can to avoid, unnecessary friction if it's possible. But no one is under any illusions. There are some fundamental challenges between our countries and between the West and China that will continue for the foreseeable future.
The EU population doesn't rebel or get heated when it's about foreign policy. Everything foreign in regards to U.S. relationship is kept dark from the media. When it's about domestic policy, then that's a different story. Foreign policy is not decoupled from domestic policy. This is the biggest lie that the American and Western liberal capitalist media tells its populations, its respective populations. Because what's American foreign policy in regards to Europe? Greatly expand and increase your military expenditures. How do you do that? Austerity. There's only a finite amount of money in the European economy. You got to move some dollars around. Okay? When you move those dollars around, its domestic impact is not seen immediately, but its domestic impact will worsen the conditions for the average working class individual. That means cuts on social spending, cuts on expenditures, cuts on public transit, cuts on things that people take for granted or people rely on to survive. So when that happens, that only increases the stress, that only increases the pressure. Even if people are short-sighted, even if people are deluded, even if people don't realize that this is going to happen, people will experience it. Even the most propagandized audience, even the most propagandized working class on this planet, the American working class, has responded by voting in Trump into office twice now. How did they do that? Why did they do that? They did that because their material circumstances have worsened over the years, and that has created an opportunity, or rather, that has created a need, an interest in changing business as usual politics and voting for an anti-establishment candidate, no matter how risky that might seem. Now, of course, unfortunately, the reason why that happened is because the Democrats actually represented business as usual politics, right? This is why I stress the importance of a populist, a left populist, real left populist candidate, especially right now. Because the consistent blame game on worsening material conditions is directed at marginalized populations. HasanAbi, don't want to spam. Please read my logs. You literally constantly fucking spam. You are the number one spammer. I'm refusing to read your logs. You literally do this every single fucking day. Every single day that you're in the chat, you consistently go, please, brother, I don't mean to spam. Check my logs. No, your question is not as significant as you think it is. Okay? God damn. Take an hour off.
Future for a variety of reasons, and it's some of the things we hope to work together with you on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. We've run out of time. I'm sorry.
I love you, chatter, but you gotta fucking cool it. Now, this is just getting funny. This might have just entered the pantheon of the greatest American speeches of all time. It's basically a hard-nosed Trump foreign policy delivered with Reagan's confidence and optimism. This is the greatest and most consequential political speech since Reagan's tear down that wall. Marco Rubio. We, the West, if our civilization endures as we hope it will, this speech may be read through the ages. Rubio 2.0 is growing on me. This is the greatest. Yeah. See? I was worried I was the number one spammer. Thank you for banning that chatter and saying that, Abi. Yeah, they are the number one spammer. They're not sane-washing it. This is the type of speech that they wanted to hear. It's very clear. That's why he got a standing O. Okay? The reason why I wanted to watch this is because I heard that the European leadership loved this shit. Marco Rubio 2028 is locked in from this moment onward, I think. More so than J.D. Vance. This will create additional pressures with, the Peter Thiel constituency, but we shall see.
Thank you. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share.
Even like the people are like, then act like it. A little bit too late, Marco. Incredible how appearances can be so deceptive. He comes across as a decent and likable individual. No, he doesn't. No, he does not. He does not at all. What he literally said here was basically Heil Hitler over and over again. and nothing has changed as far as the previous liberal international order. NATO Atlanticism brought about a complete and utter lack of sovereignty to the European vassals. And these guys literally don't want to fucking see it. They don't want to hear it. And the only time that they recognize it is when Trump said it out loud. This goes to show that a lot of these people just want the niceties. They don't mind. They don't mind being powerless. They don't mind being vassalized as long as they're not reminded of their vassalization.
Forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together.
Well, I'm on a 9-hour drive and listening to you talk about Iran. Maybe you want to drive off. No pushback whatsoever on the anti-Iran propaganda that's coming from the biggest Iranian system in your chat, by the way. But sovereignty of Iran comes above all else. Fuck the diaspora protesters as the biggest bootlickers and traitors. What for me, I always talk about Iranian sovereignty being the most important, most consequential aspect of the story.
For the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive.
I swear to God, all it was, like, if he was George W. Bush, these guys would fucking eat his dick. Donald Trump's, I mean. Doing the same exact shit that he's doing, but he was just George W. Bush. These guys would be like, oh, it's great. It's great. We love this shit. That's it. If he was a liberal doing the same shit, they would love it. It's just the aesthetics.
Because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours.
Yeah, all it took was an appeal to white identity, European identity, Euro supremacist identity. AOC slams Rubio's Munich speech as cultural nostalgia amid alliance debate. Okay, this is where it gets pushed in. This is where the pedal touches the metal, okay? Because this is going to be the clear-cut juxtaposition between Marco Rubio's representation of like the old way of doing business versus what AOC represents as a charting a new path forward. Let's see.
We heard this morning was in
sure
truth,
you might be the kingmaker.
Not too much in substance a departure of what JD.
What? 1-7 to 116 released 212 Democratic voters. No, this is before I ever said anything about Gavin Newsom. What are you talking about? Rank and file Dems the leaders. It's time to take the gloves off. AOC plus 78. Pete Buttigieg plus 68. Gavin Newsom plus 66. Kamala Harris plus 64. Gretchen Whitmer 55. Pritzker 51. Andy Bashar 48. Joe Biden 46. Josh Shapiro 46. Hakeem Jeffries plus 40. Chuck Schumer plus 1. It's fucking crazy. It is crazy, dude. I mean, it's just like the fact that it's like Pete Buttigieg is up here and even above Gavin is pretty wild. But the clear difference between AOC and everybody else for the Democratic base, the rank and file, shows that it's hers for the taking at this point. And Gavin has been trying so fucking hard to appeal. Why don't you support the Iranian protests? Wait, what? No, dude. God. I can't have this conversation over and over again with people who are professional misunderstanders. I want Iran to maintain dignity and sovereignty. I want all nations to have the same reality. Okay? And that comes only from the population that lives in Iran, and not necessarily the diaspora or the American government or the Israeli government. You will see what America's grand design for Iran is. They're already moving a second an aircraft carrier into the region.
Vance's arguments were last year, which is enforcing a U.S.-European alliance that is rooted in a cultural norm, a cultural nostalgia. But there was very little that was said about how that will materially benefit populations, both in the United States and in Europe.
Clean up here, I would say working class. I think we must not shy away from setting a line of demarcation between our way of politics and their way of politics. And if that actually alienates establishment Democrats, that's all the better. Clear-cut approach here would be to say working class, things like that. I think like imperialism is another word that you can add to your language, because any kind of socialist Marxist terminology, any kind of terminology that revolves around this is like going to be something that a lot of people don't want to touch. Yeah, no ABC theorist bullshit. We need politicians to keep bringing up class, like you said. I think saying working class is good. It's like I'm not super aggressive on utilizing theory focused language. I don't do that at all. I personally shy away from that in my commentary as well. Having said that, I think it's important. I think it's important to do that, especially now when you are looking to present yourself as the alternative.
So, given that,
the fuck?
Yes, I think in in Secretary Rubio's remarks, he spoke greatly about the border, I think, in order to prevent speaking about the true elephant in the room, which is...
Chatter, theory-focused language to the masses who don't read is so silly. I said working class. I didn't say proletariat or bourgeoisie. I said, I say, international finance capital, international conglomerates, the owning class. These are things that you can say that are Americanized versions, like or anglicized versions of these other words that are not fucking theory laden. Okay, there's a difference.
ICE, and I do believe that when we have eras of extreme inequality, eras of where the working class is continuing to suffer, they're seeing their life erode, it becomes extremely easy for authoritarians to blame other cultures and other people.
I don't like authoritarians either as a language. I like fascists. I think fascism is a better way to communicate where we're at here.
Life erode, it becomes extremely
But I like that she said working class
easy
here.
For authoritarian.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing that I think is like is another because authoritarian doesn't necessarily mean anything. And from a liberal perspective, when someone says authoritarian, they like liberals see that as like China, everybody else, right? Like they think, oh, she means like China. It could be even, you can say even Cuba is authoritarian, right? Like that's what has been historically mentioned. No, this is not nitpick. This is not nitpick. This is very important. Language is very important, especially in this moment. I think language is incredibly important here because, once again, after yesterday's speeches, a lot of people listened to what AOC was talking about, and some people understood it as like, oh, she is taking an internationalist approach, but many more thought, oh, she's doing, and myself included, in certain instances, thought maybe she's like going back to vulgar Brandonism, right? Especially when her goal is to obviously cut away from establishment Democrats and Republicans, not using their language, not using their terminology, puts an unambiguous line in the sand at a time when that lack of ambiguity is going to work. Vulgar Brandonism, I mean, that's like a joke that I use it as a joking substitute for NATO Atlanticism, like what Biden represented after Trump won. Biden was saying we're going to go back to business as usual. We're going to go back to to shepherding in the liberal international order, and it was an abject fucking failure, obviously, because Russia invaded Ukraine, and then that was a huge fuck up. And then on top of that, Israel's genocide of Gazans, of Palestinians in Gaza, that happened so close to one another that like it directly ripped apart that fabric. It directly ripped apart this like understanding that the liberal international order is gone, right? Daniel Bessner likes to reject the label fascist when describing the American right, arguing it's just liberalism. I think that's abandoning a potent word that people understand intuitively. No, when you're talking about foreign fascist movements rising up, I think fascism is the appropriate statement to use here. And the reason why I say that is because it is what that is. Liberalism is, at this point, losing control. And as liberalism withers away, fascism is Fascism is what presents or represents control when liberalism is unstable. So I do think that maybe in the old ways, maybe a decade prior, sure, you could say liberalism, but I think nowadays it's appropriate to use fascism.
To blame other cultures and other people who are most vulnerable. Now, we have to always make sure that our immigration system is orderly. I think the argument that we are advancing here.
What is this fucking video, man? Calm down.
On Greenland, I think that the president, my concern is that the president's oftentimes, as of late, the president's actions on foreign policy, and particularly his most erratic decisions, the unacceptable threatening of Greenland, happen to be tied to his domestic politics and when he feels threatened domestically. And I believe that's a relationship that
I don't even necessarily agree with that aspect of it too. I think there's a much large. If you read the national security paper that came out that spelled out the Donroe Doctrine, me and Yanis Varoufakis are in agreement on this. This is like one of the areas that we have direct agreement on, which is that there is a method to this madness. The idea that this is simply a response to like domestic pressures, the Epstein files or whatever, I don't think it's correct. I think that the Trump administration, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we like what he's doing or not, and obviously we don't like what he's doing, it comes across as disruptive, but there is a driving principle behind it. Okay? It's not necessarily a scale back of American imperialism around the globe, but more so a hardening of its closest territorial ambitions. It's not. They're not doing this because it's like, oh, Epstein, let me go fucking invade Greenland. Like, I know that that's what it comes across as sometimes, but this is something that was implemented. Like, this vision is being implemented right now, but it's a vision that is a vision that was very calculated far before Trump even got into office. It's more so to scale back on some of our global ambitions in an effort to dominate the globe better, if that makes sense. Hardening our own neighborhood, our own backyard almost, and the surrounding areas, so that we can be better equipped to continue maintaining, hegemonic superpower status. Yeah, a fortress play, if you want to think about it like that,
is something that Americans see play out.
That doesn't just serve the elites and the biggest corporations, but actually focuses on working class Americans in conflict that has cost Americans trillions of.
Trump is anything but calculated. This is a mistake. To think this is a major mistake. Okay? Because this isn't Trump. This isn't just Trump. This is a grand, this is a larger vision that Trump is simply the vessel to bring about. Like, he's not, it's not Trump making these decisions. It's people around him. Trump just happens to be the guy who is overseeing the project and maybe crazy enough to follow through on the project and can hold like a cohesive. He has the power to basically hold the base together for as long as he can while they implement this vision. Heritage Foundation and all the other billionaires did not have to line up behind a convicted felon, but they did. Liberals, for some reason, like to think all these billionaires are just too scared of Trump, and that's why they want to appease him. I think they want him, and they do have a plan. Trump may be a dumbass, but the people behind him are not. Exactly. If you listen to more sober analysis from hardened fucking policy people around the globe, okay, they will tell you this. They will tell you that Donald Trump is simply enacting a somewhat different agenda than what people are used to. It's certainly a different agenda than like liberalism, like liberal NATO Atlanticism, the rule-based international order. It's different than that. It's there's a transition taking place here, just like one of the two major liberal parties, the Republican Party, is transitioning out from being a liberal party to a post-liberal party, a fascist party.
Thousands of. We've been spending the last couple of days reassuring our friends, talking about our mutual shared interests, and that Americans back home actually want to be a force for good in the world. We don't want to be a bully. Yes, we want strength and we want peace, but we don't want to be extorting and bullying our friends. We want to be a force for good. We need a national security and foreign policy that looks like a kinetic strike against Iran often has the exact opposite response than we want, right? If the goal is to support the people of Iran in their aspiration for freedom and democracy and sovereignty, which is what they are yearning for and what they are protesting and mobilizing for right now, then we have to listen to the people of Iran. And what's very clear and what we have seen, the pattern is that when we've interfered in that recently, that has had the opposite effect, right? It actually has created a rally around the flag effect in Iran and emboldened the regime.
Wow. Jason Crow is an APAC dog. Terrible. Colorado needs better left policies, in my opinion. I mean, he's not wrong, though. He's not. When I say it, people say I'm dick riding. I'm fucking serving the Ayatollah.